Hi, I'm Kevin Ranfeld. Welcome back to Choices Unlimited, where we endeavor to get you the tools you need to make wise choices. Over the past few sessions, we've given you some tools to make wise choices. Today, we will review those tools and some of the key points that we have learned throughout our previous sessions and identify how we can use them to help us make wise choices. The first thing we looked at was knowledge is power. Can you say that with me? Knowledge is power. Power to do what? Power to make wise choices. If I have the knowledge about using a computer, it can help me do a lot of things. I can research zebras. I can write an English paper. Or I can even send a message to my friend. Having the knowledge empowers me to use that computer in a powerful way. If I have knowledge about tobacco, alcohol, drugs, and drug abuse, it can also help me to make wise choices. When we find out the truth, it helps us to make wise choices. Knowledge is power. So I encourage you, find out the truth. Don't just take someone's word for it. Why? Because knowledge is power. The next thing we looked at is addiction. We talked a lot about addiction, and we talked about how sometimes, even though we know something is bad for us, we still want to do it. Like eating donuts. You remember? We said addiction is an uncontrollable urge to use something or a substance. We kind of likened it to chocolate. Sometimes we may say, I need chocolate. Addiction is kind of like that craving that you get when you sometimes crave something like chocolate. But addiction is a little different than that. Addiction is uncontrollable, where we can control our craving for chocolate with a little willpower. Addiction causes your body to react uncontrollably. People suffering from addiction may get shaky when their bodies say they need more of the drug they are addicted to. When someone is addicted to something, they are no longer in control. Rather, that drug or substance is in control for them. Addiction equals losing control. Addiction equals losing control. No longer is that person that is addicted to a drug in control. Rather, that drug or that addiction to that drug is in control. We then looked at violence, and we said violence is a lose-lose situation. Violence leads to anger leads to hate, and hate, nothing good comes from hate. People that use violence are often called what? Yeah, they're often called bullies. We learned that bullies aren't necessarily bad people. Rather, they are hurting people. They try to hide their hurt by picking on others to make themselves feel better about themselves. Bullies often pick on those smaller than they are, possibly even younger, and usually try to single people out. What can we do to combat bullying? Well, we learned a couple different ways. We looked at the debug system. Come on, if you remember it, say it with me. Ignore, move away, talk friendly, talk firmly, and get adult help. A lot of times, utilizing that debug system will stop bullying right in its tracks. And if it doesn't, we also talked about another tool that we can use. And that tool is bully blocking. Remember, we said bullies like to single out people, individuals. And we said that there are power in numbers. When we possibly would see someone being bullied, we can come to their aid and stand up alongside of them. And maybe not just one of us, but 2 or 3 of us. Yeah, that's bully blocking. And when we simply use our words to stop that bully from doing what he's doing, then we have power over that violence. But if we use physical violence, maybe like that bully is, no one wins. If a teacher comes out and would see both the bully and you using physical violence, who do you think's going to be in trouble? That's right, both of you. Violence is a lose-lose situation. So remember, we shouldn't use violence to bully block or to combat bullying. Instead, we use our words. So, two things that we can do to combat violence is the debug system and bully blocking. And remember, violence is always a lose-lose situation. The next thing we looked at is friendships. And we looked at how friendships are very powerful. The friends that we make are very powerful. Why? Because friendships are the foundation for the choices that I make. We looked at our bullseye of friendships, and we said those people we let the closest to us have the most influence on the choices that we make. That's why it's so important that we let people that are the closest to us be the people that will influence us to make wise choices. Another important thing we mentioned is that we want to have good friends. If we want to have good friends, we need to be a good friend. If you want friends that are going to help influence you to make positive choices, you're going to have to be that kind of friend. We also looked at risks and consequences. We looked at ways we can identify both good and bad consequences for each choice. Decide the risk or the likelihood of those consequences of happening, and then use that information to decide which choice will have the best consequences. But in the end, who's responsible for the choices we make? I am. That's right. I'm responsible. Yes, friends can influence my choices, but after all, in the very end, I am responsible for the choices I make. And we looked at our house of choices. We said that the foundation of our house of choices is the friends that we have. Why? Because as we build on that foundation, we saw how friends influence our choices. And the results of those choices are the consequences of those choices. And who lives with those consequences of the choices we make? We do. So in order for us to make sure that we have a strong foundation for good choices, we have to make sure we have a firm foundation for our house of choices to stand on. You know, I have a sister that had a very good friend. And they had a nice house, but they found out the house was starting to cave in. Why? Because there was a problem with the foundation. They had to jack the house up, fix the foundation so the whole house would not come crumbling down. And it's the same thing with our choices. When we have a strong foundation, when we have friends that will influence us in a positive way to make wise choices, we can have a strong house of choices. Friends are so important. And when we choose the right kinds of friends, it can really help set us up to make wise choices. There is power in the friendships that we have. And so these are some of the tools that we looked at to enable us to make wise choices, not just pertaining to drugs, alcohol, and violence and tobacco, but in every area of our life. I hope that you will use the tools that we have learned in these sessions to help you make wise choices.